And real estate, most of the time we get paid to solve problems or challenges or whatever. We just get paid to figure these things out. So he said, $285 a land's yours. And I'm like, man, what's the catch? There's a catch here. Like, there's no way I can buy a piece of land for $285. So I went out to this land, me, my wife, and we just had a brand new newborn baby, hour and a half drive. We went out there on a Saturday, sat on the ground, looked at it like, this is a beautiful piece of land. Why would he sell it to us for this? What's the catch?
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 305. My guest today is an investor and coach with a focus on buying and selling vacant land. Brent Bowers has over 8 years of service in the Army, and he's the owner of the Land Sharks, a real estate investment company that helps people generate passive income through vacant land. Today, we're going to take a close look at this asset class to determine how you too can profit. Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Brian. Definitely a pleasure and an honor to be on here.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your service to our country and in the Army for 8 years. That's quite a commitment you made.
Much appreciated, Brian. Yeah, much appreciated.
So tell us how you went from that, being in the Army, to being in real estate, and then eventually getting into land investment.
I actually started in real estate before I started in the Army. I started in 2007, bought my first rental property, just got my real estate license, and ultimately had to borrow the earnest money deposit from my grandmother, my great-grandmother, to buy that first rental property. But it was really cool. I actually got paid to buy it as a real estate agent. I thought I had to be a real estate agent to like get in on all the sweet deals. And ultimately, I wanted to be a rental property portfolio owner. I wanted like hundreds of doors, and that was the goal. And then 2008 happened, and I was out trying to help people buy and sell real estate. And in 2009, I was still struggling. And it ultimately turned into where I was driving people around in my car for days at a time. And I was lucky to make maybe $300 in a week if someone decided they wanted to rent one of the properties, because I felt like I was in my head. No one's buying right now. Everyone's unloading. I watched real estate brokers getting out of the business, and I just kind of threw in the towel for a while. And my grandfather said, hey, join the military. You can go to school, do 20 years, you retire, you're set. Well, he had a lot of influence on me. So the next day I was like down at the recruiting station. I was like, anything's going to be easier than driving tenants around. Nothing against tenants, but we just don't do that anymore. That was like back in the old days. So I joined the military in Afghanistan by 2010 for the first time, 2011 the second time. And I was out of the States for a while. Get to come back to the United States in 2013. I had that real estate itch still. I'm an entrepreneur and I've got to create things. So I bought a bank-owned house and started renting out the rooms. And it was ultimately, I guess, called house hacking, before Bigger Pockets coined that term. And then bought a second house and then a third property, a triplex. And then I had a major issue. I was over leveraged to the max. I was like, holy cow, I'm like broke. I'm in so much debt. I got to figure out a way. So I started like haphazardly wholesaling houses, and that was doing okay. But I was an Army officer and I had a huge schedule on my plate. I was always working, always gone, always training, and I needed a better way. And that's when I stumbled upon land.
Thanks for bringing us up to speed there. So you were investing while being in the Army. What kind of schedule was that you were keeping?
So I was only working about half days. From 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. is about what it worked out to my average day. But really, that was only a half day. I had everything before 6 a.m. and everything after 6 p.m. after I got the kids to bed and, spent some time with my wife. That was the schedule when we weren't deployed, when we weren't training, when we weren't in the field. So I didn't have too much free time on my hands to go out and get in trouble. So I focused on real estate when I had that free time.
So tell us how you came across land and what made you realize this was the asset class you wanted to pursue.
I was really kind of only getting maybe one wholesale deal a month, and it was helping. I got to pay down those credit cards, but I knew there had to be a better way. So I was searching for answers, listening to podcasts like Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor podcasts, like things like this. So I was educating like every to and from work. And luckily I didn't have too far of a drive to work. Sometimes I wish it was further to have more time, but I did have a lunch break when we weren't in the field, and I would like race off of base to go and meet a seller and try and get that property under contract within like 15 minutes. And if I didn't, I would never see that seller again. I wouldn't follow up. I just didn't have the systems or the time. And ultimately I was like trying to build a team in the meantime. But I heard this podcast of a gentleman, and he was talking about buying land at just like such crazy discounts. I mean, like pennies on the dollar. And he would literally turn around overnight and like double, triple, quadruple his money and his return. And I got a sick one at home. I'm being too loud for her, so she's closing the door on me. But he would like quadruple his return. And I was like, okay, this sounds more up my alley. So I actually had a list of properties that were behind on taxes called the tax delinquent list, or some states call it the tax lien list. But I had a list, and I was not mailing the vacant land for some reason. So something gave me that idea by hearing that podcast. A spark went off. The acorn was planted, and I mailed that list 687 postcards, handwritten postcard. It just said, hey, I'd like to buy your property. It might have even said house. I don't even know. The postcard wasn't perfect, but it looked handwritten. I sent it out to 687 people. My phone rang about 85 times from callers that were behind on their taxes for the land because they've never seen like anybody mail them to buy their land. They were just about to lose it, basically. And I had time to return about 20 of those calls with my schedule. And out of those 20 calls, I did 2 deals within a couple weeks time frame that both of those deals netted me $4,500 each. I was hooked. I was like, this has got to be too good to be true. And I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And finally, I found my way of earning almost $10,000 a month in passive income from land. And I got the heck out of the military because I wanted to be home with my family more often.
That's great. And you make it sound so simple. Let's back up. So was it just you heard this guy on a podcast and then you started doing it? Where'd you get the list? How did you jump in? Did you get training, or did you just figure it out as you went along?
So I had already had training to do my wholesaling business. I found a mentor named Tom Kroll with Wholesaling Inc. And I'm so fortunate now to be a coach for Wholesaling Inc. I am their land coach, their official land coach for Wholesaling Inc. So I already had training on how to buy and sell houses at like literally lock up a house under contract at a massive discount and turn around and sell it to a cash buyer that was a no-brainer. The land was even easier because there's no house on the land. There's no foundation to fix. There's no roof to repair. There's no plumbing to have to take care of. It was just land. So I ultimately would just go and get it under contract for as little as possible. Look at the 3 lowest comps and get it for lower. But it wasn't simple. There was a lot of roadblocks. There was a lot of like fear, spending that money on the mailers because I didn't have money. I was actually putting it on a credit card. I just took action was the only thing. I just kept pushing through the fear and just taking action. And every deal turned into another learning lesson. I felt like every deal I did, still to this day, I feel like every house we buy, I still buy houses. I have apartment complexes. Well, actually not plural anymore, an apartment complex that I'm an investor in. And then our office building, but there's always a secret behind every property, I believe. Land, there's less secrets because there's nothing to repair. So it really is easier, but I was still scared. I didn't know all the answers. I just knew enough to get me through today, basically.
Land, while it seems simple, can also be quite complex. And I would imagine valuing that land and knowing how to turn it around and make money off of it does take a bit of expertise and experience and know-how. So take us through that process. Like, how are you finding the land? Take us into more detail. And then how are you determining its value and exit plan?
Let me give you an example of the first 2 deals I did when I had no clue what I was doing. The first one, those 2 calls that I said, the first guy called, he was a retired CPA and he traded like tax work a long time ago for this land. And it was funny. He like gave me the price. He said, hey, the land's not buildable. It's 2 lots. It's on the side of the Pike National Forest. And I was like, my ears went out because I was like, that's really cool. I like the Pike National Forest, but why is it not buildable? And he said, I'm not sure. You got to figure that out. So, and real estate, most of the time we get paid to solve problems or challenges or whatever. We just get paid to figure these things out. So he said, $285 a land's yours. And I'm like, man, what's the catch? There's a catch here. Like, there's no way I can buy a piece of land for $285. So I went out to this land, me, my wife, and we just had a brand new newborn baby, 1.5-hour drive. We went out there on a Saturday, sat on the ground, looked at it like, this is a beautiful piece of land. Why would he sell it to us for this? What's the catch? So I had no clue what it was worth. We're leaving the land, and it's as if God planted a real estate office himself there for me to see that and call them. Because I was like, if anybody knows what this stuff's worth, it's probably that real estate office, like right down the street from it. It was like a mile away. So I asked the realtor that answers the phone. Luckily, someone answered the phone. And I was like, hey, here's the land. It's on Lake Avenue. There's 2 lots. It's right down the street from you. She goes, oh, I know where you're talking about. I was like, great. I want to see what this land is worth. Like, what's the 30-day blowout price? I'm about to buy it. I was thinking if you could list it for me, I want to get it done now price. I can't leave my money in this very long, like $285. It sounds bad for me to say that, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but I didn't have $285 to leave into that land. That was like grocery money and diaper money. So she said, I don't know about the 30-day blowout price, but it's probably worth about 10 grand on the MLS. I was like, that where they like, chick, 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 chick. And my mind was like turning. So I thanked her for her time. I said, I'll call you when I buy it. I hung up with her. She called me back almost 5 minutes later and said, hey, Brent, what do you think if I bought it? And I said, I love that. Like, what are you offering? She said, $5,000. I said, okay, when can you close? She said, Wednesday. I said, like 4 days from now? It's because it's Saturday. She said, yes. I was like, I felt like she was just like getting annoyed by me at this point. And because I was just so excited. Like, I'd never seen like about $285 to make $5 grand. So I said, okay, send me the contract. So she sent me a contract on the realtor, vacant land contract. She knew why it was not buildable, because they needed a second egress for the firefighters if they ever built houses. And the city was stopping it because they had to go over railroad tracks, or maybe the railroad tracks were stopping it. I don't know, but she knew it more than I did. And lo and behold, she sent the contract. I called the seller. I said, hey, I'll bring you the 285 on Tuesday. Bring me the deed. So he brought me a quit claim deed. He quit claiming it. I didn't even know what that was at the time. Good enough. So I brought it to the title company, and the title company took it, said, okay, we'll call you tomorrow. They called me the next day. I got my $5,000 check, and then literally did a second one of those deals the next day. But you asked me how I found it. That was on the tax delinquent list. It was land that was behind on taxes. Now, let me just do a disclaimer. That's not the only land I buy. I still find deals that's not on the tax delinquent list, and they're not out of state. But how did I talk to those people? I sent them a postcard. I sent them a handwritten postcard saying, hey, I'd like to buy your land. Call me, basically. And I just talked to him. I just told the guys, like, hey, I've never bought a piece of land before. I'm new to this. And I feel like when you are humble like that with the seller, they may take advantage of you. But 9 out of 10 people in this world are really good people.
And that's a great story. And that's a great experience for your first land acquisition and flip, basically. So the question is, why didn't the seller understand its value? Why did he just say $285?
He was tired. I think he was probably in his 80s. He traded it a long time ago for basically nothing. He did some tax work. So I come across that all the time. These sellers are just completely unemotionally attached to this land and never lived on it. It's not like a house that a woman raised her entire family in there and lived in the house 30 years with her husband, and he's passed away, and she's just got an emotional attachment and she wants to make a boatload of money on the house. It's not like that. The land, they either inherit it, they get it somehow or another. It's just not a big deal to them most of the time. 99 out of 100 land sellers don't need me. Like, I'm looking for that 1 out of 100 where it's like Dolph DeRue says, he wrote for the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. He's just a total genius. He goes, the deal of the lifetime comes around once a week as long as you're looking for it.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. How do you deal with the tax liens then? If taxes are owed and you're flipping or wholesaling this, or wholesaling, I guess, what do you do about those tax liens?
Yeah, usually the title company lets me know if there's back taxes and we pay it at closing. Now, once in a while, I'll close outside of a title company. If it's like a cheaper property, like I'm paying like $200 for it or whatever, I'll do my title searches, owner encumbrance searches, all that, make sure there's no liens, back taxes. And whatever it is, when we close on the land, I make sure I bring the certified check or the cashier's check or the cash to the county recorder, not the recorder, but the treasurer, the county treasurer, and get that certificate saying I'm paid up on the taxes because I don't want to lose it to the tax lien investor when it becomes deed eligible or foreclosure or whatever. But a lot of times we catch people right there at that point. And this gentleman was also at that point, the retired CPA. He was just before losing it. He was within a few months of it being deed eligible. So he didn't care. $285 was like, hey, I'm going to take my wife out to a nice dinner with this.
How much did he owe in back taxes?
I think that one was maybe like $350. So he owed more. I generally see the taxes like on properties like that, like costing more than what the seller actually gets. I've gotten land for free. I got one piece of land that there was like $4,000 owed on back taxes. And I was afraid of this property. It was in Calhoun, Colorado. It's 1 acre commercial lot. Like people ask, does this work on commercial? Darn right. It works on a bicycle. Like if you get it at a discount, you can sell it for more. But basically we took it for $1. We said, we'll buy it for $1. We'll pay off the back taxes. And that one, I told my team, do not buy it. I don't want to buy that because a lot of these we seller finance. That's why we have so many buyers, because most people, Americans, think, what's it going to cost me each month? They don't care what it costs, the total amount or what the interest they're paying. They just care what it costs each month. But that one, the one on the commercial lot that I'm talking about, I was like, do not buy it. We're going to sign that contract to a cash buyer. Well, lo and behold, there was a guy that was like beating down our door to get this property. We ended up making a $27,000 assignment fee, a net profit on a free piece of land.
Wow.
You know why I told my team not to buy it? Because there was a barn on that property that supposedly had asbestos in it. And that's what the seller told me. I was like, I don't want to deal with any environmental issues. I don't want to deal with asbestos. I don't want to touch it. That's why I love land, because it's usually clean.
Are you saying that if you bought it and the deed is in your name, then that becomes your problem if there is asbestos in the barn?
That's what I felt. Like I was like, I don't want any risk with this. I don't ever want to take ownership of this. I'll sell the contract though. That's all I did.
Now, is that how you usually approach the land? Are you ever taking possession, getting the deed in your name?
Yeah, I would say 8 out of 10 parcels of land we buy, I usually purchase with funds, either my own funds or funds I borrow, or I'll partner with somebody. And I like to buy that land at usually where I can buy it at a low enough discount or a margin of safety, as Warren Buffett calls it. Basically, I'm just buying it at a massive discount. And then I turn around and sell it to someone else for a down payment and a monthly payment. I love passive income. That's what got me out of the military. That's what allowed me to say, okay, my expenses are $6,000 a month. I make $9,000 a month in land. My bills are covered. I'm financially free. So, and we've just continued building that up every time we do a land deal.
So your model then is not wholesaling. Your model is more buy and then resell as a land contract.
That's right. But here's the thing. I eventually run out of money. So I got to wholesale a parcel of land from time to time, or flip a parcel of land where I just buy it real quick and sell it real quick to keep funding my land acquisitions. It's like rental houses. Like they do the Burr method, the buy, renovate, rent, and then refinance, pull your money back out. I'm not really pulling my money back out quickly on the land. So I'll flip a parcel or wholesale a parcel, but it's the same thing. I want the passive income almost like a rental property would give me, but my commodity or my tool is land, where some people use houses or apartments or mobile homes.
That's great. So you're creating a lot of passive income. And are you using land contracts?
Oh yeah, that's what I use. Every once in a while, I will, like if a realtor sells my land, we'll close it through a title company and the buyer will bring in a pretty decent down payment. And then I'll hold a deed of trust and a promissory note. So it depends how we close it. And that's fine. Then I'm just a bank. I no longer own the land, but I'm just a bank now.
Where are you buying? Is it all kind of in your backyard? And how hands-on do you need to be for this?
I really started out in my own backyard within about a 2.5 hour radius is how I started out. I kind of like cut my teeth and got confidence, made a lot of mistakes. And then I branched out to Florida because my dad was in Florida and we're now actually living back in Florida. Then I went to Arizona, about 117 lots out there. A land investor brought me a package deal and I was like, that's a no-brainer. We bought it for $391 a lot, by the way. We sell those things for $3,300 a lot on financing. So it turns out that like we're more than 11 or 12xing our money on each one of those lots.
Back up. You bought it for $391 a lot, $391 a lot.
You got it.
And you're selling it for how much per lot?
We on average sell them about $3,300 per lot. So we'll get like a couple $100 down. So like $300 to $400 down. So we get our money back out. That's the cool thing about this. My security is out. Like my risk is gone when I get my money back. It's pure profit after that. That never worked for me on a rental house. It took me forever to get my money back out of my rental properties. And it still does. I still buy rental houses.
That lot, you bought 120 of those at $391. So that's, where were you, about $45,000?
You're really good at math. Yeah, it was right at 45. It was 117 of them. And this was almost 2 years ago. You know how many of those I have left? Almost like 12 now at this point. And here's the thing. Not everybody is going to honor that contract for deed. This is kind of the ugly side of land investing. You know, easy come, easy go. I don't do background checks, credit checks, none of that. If they can afford the down payment and the monthly payment, they keep the land. If they don't, they got 60 days to make it right or communicate with us. We'll restructure the loan because it's fine. We want to ultimately make a landowner from our buyer. But if they don't communicate and we can't talk to them, we'll have to take that land back. I'm pretty sure my grandchildren will end up with some of this land one day.
How long did it take you to pay yourself back that $45,000 you put into the 117 lot?
Geez, and that one I actually brought in a partner because I didn't just have the 45K sitting around. So I want to say, and I might be a little off on this, I want to say it took us almost like 8 months to get it all back because we flipped some of it. We wholesaled some of it. There's other land investors that also bought it from us. It was definitely less than 12 months. And, you know, it wasn't even my money.
That's great. What kind of terms do you usually get when you're reselling this land on a land contract?
So it was kind of an evolution. Like I said, I was kind of building this airplane in the air. I honestly did 0% interest until about maybe 22 months ago. And you know how I figured this out to start charging interest? I looked at my ledger there was one loan we charged interest on and I saw where we made $1,900 in interest. And I was like, oh, goodness gracious. We literally printed money there for ourselves. I was like, what if I 10x this from 1,900 to like 19 grand next year? Well, I have someone help me sell this land. She's literally a retired grandmother. She travels across the country. So she sells our land. I called my virtual assistant that posts all the land. I said, change everything. Put on there 9% interest, 9% interest across the board. We'll do a term anywhere from 5 years to 30 years now, because a 30-year mortgage, if you got a $200,000 mortgage at 6% over 30 years, someone's going to pay back over $400 and something thousand with compounding interest. Like Albert Einstein said, it was the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest. So we're using that. So I saw that 1,900 and that just literally blew up. And here's what's really cool too about the interest now that we charge. If someone's on the fence about buying a piece of land and they don't want to pull the trigger that day, my land specialist says, hey, you know, what interest rate, if we could lower the interest rate, would you feel more comfortable, you know, taking taking ownership of this land today? Most buyers will say, yeah, I would actually be interested in getting a lower interest rate. So we figured out that it's actually a negotiation tool, and more people will pull the trigger if we lower that interest rate, and they'll pull it faster. So we ask them what they'd like to get it lower to. They say, 7% would be awesome. And before we were getting 0. So anything above 0 is great in my mind. So she's like, let me check with my partner, or let me check with Brent or whatever. So she'll either call me or Jen and make sure it's okay. And of course it's okay. And she'll call them back and say, hey, she'll get the commitment again. Hey, if I can lower that interest rate to 7%, like you said, you'll pull the trigger today. And they say, yes. She goes, well, I actually just did something better. I got it to 6% for you. So now the buyer is like super happy. And Helen, our land sales specialist, is now a hero. And they come back and buy more land. So literally 0% was hurting us. And also the IRS doesn't like to see that either.
The IRS doesn't like a 0% loan?
No, when you lend money, they assume you're earning interest on it. And it's more, how do I say it? More hoops for us to jump through, more paperwork for us to fill out. So it's just easier for us to charge interest.
Do you keep it under 10 then, just to avoid any other issues at the top end?
I've seen land investors charge up to 12 and 13% interest. I just like the single digit number for some reason. It just seems reasonable, not absurd.
And what was it that kept you from charging interest in the first place? Why would you have done 0% financing?
I was already getting a minimum of a 3x return on the land. So I felt that was good enough. So I was like, man, anything more might just really be greedy. And I wanted people to come to me as like, this is a great deal, but I don't think it attracted any more people. I think some people really didn't understand why would you charge 0% interest?
Yeah. And when you had that mindset shift, was there any pushback? Did you encounter any resistance why you shouldn't be charging interest?
From my salesperson, yes. She goes, that's going to stop our buyers. That's the only reason why they come to us, is because we give them 0% interest. And I said, if you believe that, you're right. And if you just like Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. So I said, stop believing that and do it. So I was like, you don't have a choice. I might have blamed it on the IRS too, just so I wasn't the bad guy.
Did she come back to you later and say, Brent, you were right all along. I should have listened to you?
No. And she'll sell 9 or 10 parcels of land in a week sometimes and hit multiple bonuses. As long as I pay those bonuses out, she's happy. But, I think there's a thing, I think this is something, maybe it's women across the board. They usually don't say when the guy's right. They just usually don't tell us.
What other mindset shifts have you had in your investing business or in life that have changed the way you do business?
I feel like I get one a week. I'm always learning something. It's just believing, you can, and just getting over the fact. Most people are afraid of fear of rejection or fear of failure. I've never been afraid to fail. I would say it's more the rejection side. So I feel like, it was a mindset shift for me yesterday. I just got to get over the fear of rejection because I've gotten comfortable. Remember, I was telling you about 2008? I was very, very uncomfortable for a long time. I was paying credit cards with credit cards. I owned a rental property. I used to own a company, and here is a married guy having to move in with his in-laws. So I got so used to, during that time, I got a rhino behind me. He's got 3-inch thick skin. He takes torpedoes. He's always charging. And that's what the Wholesaling Inc. tribe is called. We're called the Rhino tribe. So it's like, you just got to get over the fear of rejection. So that was my mindset shift yesterday. I've gotten too comfortable. I got to get out there again and start getting some rejection, because that's where, the success happens, just on the other side of that, getting uncomfortable. Like getting on this podcast. I get nervous right before every single one of these. And then it just happens. Then we have fun.
What is the fear of rejection, and how does it relate to what you're doing right now with land? And what kind of new rejection are you looking for?
The new rejection I'm looking for, let me answer the first one. The first one is basically, like, I've gotten used to having my land acquisition manager go and buy the land and take the phone calls and get the angry sellers yelling at her rather than me. Same thing with my land sales specialist. She gets rejected all the time. No, we don't want the land. Or they lie to her and say, yeah, we'll call you tomorrow, when they're just not interested. So I've had people, doing it for me so long now, I haven't gotten rejection for a while. It's just happening without me. So the fear of the rejection I'm looking for is I'm going to start contacting people with like 50 acres, 100 acres, the land that could be developed, and actually getting that stuff under contract and going out there and hunting again, but this time hunting for whales rather than minnows. So that's the fear of, that's the rejection I'm looking for. And you get rejected enough, you're going to hit a home run.
That's bigger than just the fear of rejection. Now, your mindset shift is more about, okay, you've been buying these single parcels or smaller properties. Now you're going to go after bigger acreage, bigger, 10x the size of the properties. What other fears and shifts in your business do you have to overcome to make that happen?
Probably the challenges of, would we be able to take that down? What if I can't find a developer that wants it after I get it under contract? What if the developer takes too long to do his due diligence and I fall out of contract? All those fears that we make up in our mind type thing. For example, I almost didn't get on this podcast because I was afraid my daughter would come in here and bother me the whole time on the podcast. And this time it actually, a fear happened. It came true, but she just wants to be on the podcast too. So, but you just take action, and most of the fears we have don't ever end up happening. Most of them.
What about money? Like if you do go after the bigger parcels, bigger acreage, where are you finding the funds to take those down?
A lot of times there's people out there, they see what you're doing and they catch wind of it. And most people want to jump on a speeding train, or just kind of like with the real estate market. When it gets hot and prices are going up on everything, we have more people jump into the market. But when it crashes and it goes down, like everyone's sad, depressed, and no one wants to buy a house because it's just fearful. There's a lot of fear going on. So the same thing happens, when they see you having success with like those parcels I was just telling you the story about. So people will say, hey, let me know when you find one of those, or let me know when you find a deal. And it's also talking to people like my dentist. Hey, Brent, how's it going? It's going great. We're doing a lot of land deals, but I actually sometimes I have to pass up on a deal because just I kind of run out of money, or I don't have enough money for all the deals I'm finding. And people will hear that and come back to you later and be like, I've got some money. Let me know when you find one of those deals. And 9 out of 10 people are not going to come back to you, but that it only takes one. And sometimes your dental hygienist or the dentist or the chiropractor might have $150,000 sitting in an account earning 0.05% interest, doing nothing with it. So they're absolutely happy to jump on a land deal that you could 3x your returns on. And then for the person that doesn't even know anybody or doesn't have a dentist, just get it under contract for a low price and find someone that will pay just a little bit more for it than what you've got it under contract. Wholesale the contract.
If you bring in investors, how do you structure that? Do you syndicate? Do you joint venture? I mean, how exactly does that work?
The easiest way is to have your title company, if they're going to be an actual lender, a debt partner, give them a deed of trust and a promissory note. That way they're protected. Something happens to you, they get their money back. And there's also, that's the easiest way. I have syndicated where multiple investors brought in funds. That's a little bit more difficult. So you set up a 506B and a Regulation D, and it costs about $12,000 for me to have that attorney write it all up. So that's a little bit higher level, but I didn't start there. And then there's also, let me give you the third way. The example I told you about those 300 or 117 lots that we paid $391 a piece for. I brought in a partner with it, and we both went on the deed, even though he paid the money for it. So then he was just literally a partner, an actual owner of the land.
Was that like a 50-50 split there? He puts up the money, you do the work, or how did you structure that?
He put up all the money, I did all the work, and he gets 33% of profit after expenses. So he gets a check. He gets passive income every month too from all those land sales.
What's the biggest deal you've done to date?
We bought that one where we syndicated was 1.2 million, and we only had to raise 600,000 of cash. And we raised that. That was the syndication deal. And the seller is holding a seller carryback of 600,000 at 0% interest for 1 year, no payments, and is approved for 44 townhomes. and we've already got a developer that we're joint venturing with, and he's just already gotten the city approvals. He's actually about to break ground on it. So I would say that's probably the biggest deal I've done. That is absolutely the biggest deal I've done yet.
So now are you going to 3x your money on that deal, or what's your goal with that one?
The goal was to basically make a pretty solid return on it within about a year's time. And it looks like it's going to work. So that was our first one. So it was really more, we're going to make money. We could have made a whole lot more. Remember, I talked to you about building the airplane in the air. We should have hired that syndication attorney sooner, because she showed us all the fees we missed out on as the guy, building the syndication. But all I'm getting at is, for the listener, like, I'm not perfect. Like, we're just learning as we go. We're going to make profit and learn at the same time. So no, I mean, I don't think we're going to quite 3x our money on that one, unfortunately, but it's a profit and we're also learning.
You're right. It is a process and you're learning as you go along. I mean, obviously you've done this enough that you're probably pretty savvy at this point, but when have you lost money? Like, what's the downside risk to land investing? And give us some examples of actually losing some money.
I can honestly say I have not lost money in land yet. I have lost money on rental property big time. And that one I bought in 2007 I actually went in the negative on that one. But I got a great tax write-off now. So I can't say I've lost money in land yet. I've done a little over 286 land purchases now at this point. I would say I've come close though. I bought a crater in the ground one time in Woodland Park, Colorado. Basically, I got cocky. I saw the land was worth $33,000 per the tax appraiser or the county assessor. So I never go off of assessed value or what they say it's worth after that. A lot of people all the time are like, well, what do you pay if the assessed value is this? I don't care what the assessed value is. And I don't care what the assessor says it's worth. I care what it's actually worth. So it said it was worth, the property value was $33,000. I bought it for $3,300. Turned out to be a huge hole in the ground. It was a treasurer's deed. And what that means is basically it was a tax lien investor, and they paid enough years until it became deed eligible, and they took the property from the owner. They foreclosed on it. So that tax lien investor got that deed from the treasurer, and then they did a quit claim deed to me, and I now had a clouded title for 9 years, and I didn't know that starting out. Can't get title insurance on that. So I had a crater in the ground, treasurer's deed that gave me a cloud in the title, and I almost had this thing sold for like $19,000, and we found out about all these things because I never went and looked at the land. Like, I didn't send anybody to look at it. I just got cocky. I was like, well, it's worth 33. I'm buying it for 30. It's worth 33,000. I'm buying it for 3,300. No brainer, right? Well, I ended up selling it for $3,300 on payments for like $300 a month. So luckily I got my money back. So I probably did lose money on that one, honestly, after paying my team and title company, yada, yada.
Are you pretty much limiting your downside risk by paying pennies on the dollar?
Yeah, that's what I try and do. A lot of times lately, I have not accomplished this as much as I used to. I used to get away with pretty much, I wouldn't spend more than 33 cents on the dollar. So if the land was worth 100,000, we buy it for 33,000. Well, the country has, went into like a building boom, and land is at high demand right now. So if I can get a piece of land under 60 cents on the dollar right now, I'm super happy. So yes, I always try and buy, just like Warren Buffett says, buy with a margin of safety. So basically get it at a maximum discount. And that will cover up a lot of mistakes. When you have something at a rock solid discount, like there's room for error. There's a buffer in there. So that's how I mitigate my risk.
And other than the money that you put up and pay your team, what other risks are there that could catch you unaware and cost you more money?
Literally, the economy could crash tomorrow. And if my land buyers lose their job, they're probably going to pay their rent or their house payment over my land payment. But something I've done to mitigate that risk is we almost have 100 notes paying us payments on land that we've sold. What I've done to mitigate that risk is we only have debt on 3 of those parcels. And the plan is to have it paid off by October 1st. But the reason why we have debt on it is it didn't work out like I had planned. I had planned to get $40,000 down payments on each one of those 3. And we only got a $40,000, a $20,000, and then a $10,000 So it didn't pay off my note. So that's the plan, is to completely be debt free with the land. That way, if I take it back, we end up taking it back, I don't have payments on it besides the taxes and HOA and all that.
So being free and clear is important to you. And it sounds like first dollar in profit is always going to pay off the note that you have with the seller.
Yes, absolutely. Because here's the thing, it's so easy to get over leveraged in real estate. And everyone I talked to that failed during the crash, and I shouldn't say failed, went through hard times, they were just over leveraged. So I'm doing my best to learn from their mistakes. I didn't lose that first house that I bought through the crash, but luckily I got a job, and a lot of times money came out of my pocket to pay for it. Most of the time.
Brent, it seems like you really enjoy this strategy. You built a team around it, and it's a lot of fun for you. Tell us why this is so much fun.
When you can count on your paycheck coming in the next month, and you know what it's going to be from land, that's just a lot of security. Number two is you can build a team around this. This is almost like the reason why I keep it so simple with vacant raw land is, like, we can hire a team to do this. It turns into like the McDonald's, like factory line, assembly line. Like, it gets 1 squirt of ketchup, it gets 2 pickles, put the bun on type thing. Like, my team is doing deals while we're doing this podcast. So that's a lot of fun for me. I'm now creating jobs for other people. It's not me. Like, you show me a business owner that's doing all the work, I'll show you one that's upset, angry, disgruntled, because that guy's just got a job. I have a business, and that's a lot of fun. And then I can stay home with my daughter, and, when she's sick or whatever, and spend time and go on vacation when I want. But there's still work involved. It took a lot of work to get here.
Since you are a veteran, talk about veterans investing in real estate and how just your military background has helped you get to where you are today.
Let me tell you one thing, the coolest thing that veterans have is that VA loan. I've bought multiple houses with the VA loan. A lot of people don't realize how those even work. I mean, you can literally get a house with like no money out of your pocket, and then you can have multiple VA loans, and then also I think, and you might know more about this, Brian, I think they just took the VA loan cap completely out on Florida. There's like no cap in Florida anymore for the VA loan. So literally the house I'm standing in right now that we just bought, we moved down to get closer to our family. We literally just used our VA loan and there was like no cap, because I was like, well, I don't know if it'll cover that high of a house. And it sure enough did. So that's one advantage that the veterans have. A second advantage is, real estate, no one's getting shot. No one's screaming at, well, yeah, actually, never mind. Sellers sometimes scream at you, but we got screamed at all the time in the military. So it's not nearly as hard as getting up every morning or deploying or training or basic training. So I would say just keep that mindset and build a business. Like, business is easy.
How would someone find out more about you and the Land Sharks?
I actually just launched a YouTube channel a couple months ago. It's called Brent Bowers. So heck, I would appreciate it if anybody just went to that YouTube channel and subscribed. Also, I'm a Wholesaling Inc. coach, so they can go to wholesalinginc.com/land. That's wholesalinginc.com/land. I put a ton of stuff on my YouTube channel, though. I'm like the only guy on there talking about land.
Yeah, it's not a very common strategy. You don't hear that as an asset class and a strategy very often. You've certainly found some incredible success in that. And I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about it and, take us through kind of the process, how you did your first deal, some of the larger deals you've done, and how you kind of structure your team and the whole investing process. It's been a really fascinating conversation, Brent. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.